Hey, what is up guys? It's Lewpac back with another Albion Online video for you, and today we've got a very special video. We've got the Rise of Avalon weapons preview. So Rise of Avalon is the upcoming expansion for Albion Online that is now announced to drop August the 12th. And that's actually a very exciting date for a number of reasons. Obviously, it's not too far away, which is awesome. But also, I am going to be live from Sandbox Interactive's headquarters in Berlin when the expansion drops. So there's going to be some awesome content and some amazing live streams when the expansion actually hits live server. But for now, we have it on the test server. They've actually uploaded the full version of, the current build. It's a work in progress, so not everything is perfect. Not everything is exactly how it's going to be, but we can get a super good idea. And today's video, we're going to be showing you all of the new weapons and the offhands that are going to be available in Rise of Avalon when it comes. We're going to check out the abilities, we're going to test them on some mobs, talk about them briefly because there's a fair few to get through, and hopefully you guys can give me your thoughts in the comments about what you think, honestly, about these various weapons. There's some really cool stuff in here. As you can see from the looks, like they're all, you might recognize some of the abilities, some of the weapon sort of styles from the dungeons. This looks like the big cannons from the Avalonian dungeons. Obviously the bongos, the Earth Keepers here, these look like the guys that the mace users have in the Avalonian dungeons. So some of it is familiar to you guys who run Avalonians, but as you can see, there's some really cool looking weapons. Obviously these skins might not be entirely final, but you get the idea. Anyway, we're going to work through them. What I will do is actually start off with the three offhands. So we do have three new offhands. There's not a whole lot to talk about with these, so I'll get through them briefly, and I'm actually going to delete things as I go, just so I don't lose track of what I've actually got. If you want to test these out on the test server, you can jump on by selecting test server when you open the Albion launcher, and there's actually a crafter in town, in every single town, that will let you craft anything you want for free, so you can go and try these out. So first off, we do have an awesome Celestial Sensor. This is the offhand for casters, and this is actually a healing offhand, so it lowers your defenses versus players and mobs, similar to the Crypt Candle, but it gives you a healing bonus in return. So this is kind of the healer version of a Crypt Candle. It looks pretty cool, it looks like a little incense burner that a priest might use. Decent offhand, and this will definitely be a feature of things like hardcore expeditions, certain PvE stuff. We'll see if anyone's playing it. Obviously the downside's quite heavy for a healer, especially with the spammer jammers going out of meta, but it could be definitely playable. The tank line, or the warrior line offhand, is a new shield called the Astral Aegis. It gives threat generation, defense as you would expect from a shield, but it gives ability cost reduction, so it makes you more energy efficient. I don't really know where this will fit in, because in PvE you want the Cative Shield really for more CC. In ZVZ you're generally using two-handers. The new weapons are pretty much exclusively two-handers for the most part. I don't think there's any one-handers apart from the spear here, but we'll have a look in a bit. So I'm not sure where that quite would fit in with the shield, but it definitely looks cool. And maybe ability cost will be an issue for some people, but genuinely you don't really struggle for energy as a tank in any situation. The final offhand then from the Hunter tree is the Sacred Scepter. This offhand is a CC resistance offhand, so this is just nothing but CC resistance, which, okay, it's a lot of CC resistance, 269, and I guess it's maybe good for Gatherer offhands. Could be a decent offhand to replace the Mistcaller, but it's going to be very expensive because it makes you very hard to CC. With a 269 CC resistance, that is a hell of a lot. But really, I don't know what the use of this will be, because there's not a lot of CC you have to worry about in PvE. In PvP, there's just going to be better options. I guess in ZVZ it could function, because you can get chain CC'd by Grove Keepers, Camlands and the like. But again, I don't know where it'll fit in. I'm sure the player base will come up with the builds to go with it. Anyway, Right, so that is it for the offhands, and now we get on to the juicy bit. We get on to the weapons. So the first one we're going to look at is the new axe, the Realm Breaker. The new ability for this is called Aftershock. You jump and slam the axe into the ground, dealing damage, physical damage in an area to the enemies. It also casts a little cone at the destination, which will knock people up. Now, I have actually noticed in testing with this that currently it doesn't do AoE damage consistently. Generally, the things hit by the cone get AoE'd, or it's actually quite a small AoE on landing. It's not quite as big as I thought. So you kind of wanna try and hit everything face on. So you see there, this guy didn't actually take the damage. So I don't know whether it's actually not doing the AoE properly yet and it's only affecting the cone area, but it's something that we'll test more. I'm currently using some refresh builds, by the way, just so I can get my cooldowns up quicker. Again, it's a big leap. It's a very fast animation compared to something like the one-hand mace or the snare charge or anything like that, or dual swords. It's a very, very quick animation. We don't know if it's interruptible without further testing, but as I said, it's going to be very hard to hit it with a skill interrupt like Fiends, because it's so quick. You could get knocked by a cartwheel, but I'll have to do some more testing and see if it's interruptible. A cool looking ability, and of course, the knock up similar to Rising Blow is always going to be useful. I like the axes as well. This one is kind of oversized, really. It's even bigger than the Great Axe. This is the T8 variant, so obviously it's going to be the biggest and most impressive, but a cool ability nonetheless. So we'll get rid of that and we will equip the Hand of Justice, which is the new hammer. We have an ability called Onslaught here, where you charge towards a ground target while spinning the hammer. Enemies hit in a 3.5 radius while spinning will be pulled towards you and stunned. At the target destination, you slam the hammer on the ground and hit everyone in an AoE. So again, you can see it's got a nice long range here. We'll grab the buff while we go, and we're going to look for a group of enemies ideally, because we want to see how this works. So as you spin through, you can see this is just awesome, and it's got such a short cooldown. Really, like the base cooldown for me is 30 seconds, but I'm using some reduction abilities. Now that is a cool ability, and honestly, this is like the hammer version of the Camlan, isn't it? So let's activate the Stalker Jacket for extra banter and then just drag them all in and then slam them. Oh my goodness, this is just a cracking ability, isn't it? That is so fun. You can imagine some clap montages with this and other stuff, like grab them all in and slam. It knocks them up as well, which is nice. That's definitely got ZVZ potential. It's got montage potential. It's, again, similar to the axe. It's a very quick animation though. It's not a slow animation. You quickly go there and you just slam. Clumps of enemies in a ZVZ are just, oh my goodness. I mean, I can imagine a build where you blink through them with delayed teleport, like spin back through with Onslaught, bring them all into your team and just clap the whole bunch. The stun, the knock up is only like 0.5 seconds. All of the ones that get dragged with you get stunned, but that's the setup for then your Grove Keepers to come in, your Morning Stars, your Camlans, your Silences, and then the Brimmies just drop. I like it. It looks cool as well. I'm not sure what this sort of medic symbol. You're not really healing anybody with it, so I don't know about the medical symbol on it. But definitely a cool weapon and a fantastic animation. They all sort of follow this Avalonian theme, which is really nice. So next we're going to look at the Kingmaker, which is the two-handed sword here. You've got Majestic Smash is the new weapon. The new ability, sorry. Swing the blade around you and knock enemies into the air. We're getting a recurring theme with the knock-ups here. So there's going to be a lot of knock-ups once these weapons drop. While the enemies are in the air, you follow up with a massive vertical smash, dealing physical damage in a line. So it's a sort of vector target thing. So it's a knock-up and slam. I mean, what you want is all of the enemies in a clump in order for you to hit this, right? So the other weapons suddenly start to look quite good. You know, the onslaught, spin, gather them all up. We're going to try it on some mobs here. What we'll do is we'll use these mobs to get some stacks, hopefully, once the cooldowns are up. There's a bug which I've noticed with the ultimate cooldowns of the weapons right now do not follow the same pattern as the others. Like, you don't get GCD when you zone with the ultimates because they've not coded them as proper skills yet. They're just work in progress. So currently they don't get GCD when you zone in and out, which obviously would be game breaking because you could zone in and just use your ult straight away in a zone when other people can't use their cooldowns. But again, yeah, quite a cool ability. Not the cleanest though, like it knocks up everybody around you, but only hits the guys in front. So really, you're going to want to make sure that the targets are in front of you. Like, you're going to need a nice big clump of people to hit, but definitely a cool animation, and it's going to be very satisfying. The applications for it, I mean, I could see it used in 5v5 because it does have an impressive amount of damage as well. 1391 damage on a 22-second cooldown is a lot of base damage. I definitely can see this being played. It looks cool as well. Gives me like a kind of Ash Candy from WoW vibe, but another cool weapon. But again, you know, knockups. Knockups seem to be a big feature of these weapons. So we'll get rid of the Kingmaker and we'll take a look at the claws, the Bridled Fury. This one here doesn't actually have a knockup, believe it or not. So this one, it's based on your Sunder armor. You leap backwards after slashing enemies in a cone. So it's kind of an exit ability. So you build up your stacks of Sunder. We're going to bring him in here so we can get them all together. And then you leap back from the target and slash everybody in an AoE. So it's kind of a mobility ability. It's got quite a short cooldown. It says 6-meter range on the actual thing, like in the details, but it says a 8-meter range in the description. So which is going to be correct, I don't know. The main hit is a lot of damage, but the damage depends on either Sunder or Assassin Spirit. So what I'm thinking with this ability is if you're running Sunder, you're only going to get max damage against the single target. The target with 3 stacks will take max damage. Whereas if you're wanting to hit clumps of enemies, you're going to want Assassin Spirit because that's based on you. And in theory, you should be able to hit everybody for the big damage like that. So it's kind of nice. It's a short cooldown, and with Dash and the Assassin's Leap ability, I kind of like that because in theory, you can, you know, you've got a lot of mobility there. You've got Dash, you've got the Assassin's Leap, and you've got this. You've got 3 mobilities. Similar to the Bloodletter then. Seems to be a bug with Assassin Spirit right now as well with this. So hopefully they get that ironed out. Assassin Spirit not restacking. Another cool yellowy kind of animation. Very good with the Assassin's Hood, by the way. The Assassin's Hood will almost fully reset this ability. And right now, I do usually use Quick Cast for more sort of clutch play. But during this video, of course, I'm going to be using the indicators just so we can check them out. So that is the Claw ability. A bit more AoE. Again, this could be potentially a ZVZ kind of Claw, because that's a lot of burst damage in an area, coupled with the mobility of Claws. Could be awesome. So, the new bow ability, Lucha and Hawk, is a new mechanic for Rise of Avalon and for Albion Online. It gives you stacks of Lucha and Hawks, right? And you can fire them in succession. You have to fire them fairly quickly, I believe. So if we activate it here, you can see we've got some charges of it, and then we can target it, target it, target it. And if you wait too long, you lose your stacks. But basically, it's 4 independent skill shots. So if your targets are moving, like in a ZVZ, or you're trying to gank someone, or someone's trying to dodge you, you're basically trying to hit them as you go, right? So if they're kiting along, you could be shooting through. It feels a little bit like a wailing bow, right? It feels a bit like a wailing bow, but with 4 shots instead of 1. The damage obviously won't be as high, but you get multiple shots with it. It feels nice to use. It's nice and quick and responsive. I don't know if it could be purged. Obviously, that could be a slight deal breaker, but you don't get long to fire all your shots. If you don't fire a shot for a few seconds, it expires. So when you see an enemy activate it, you know they're going to be firing fairly quickly. The damage seems good. It seems fun to use, but this is a cool new ability, man. Being able to sort of stack and sort of start a step and then shoot again, rather than just being stationary for the ult, is kind of cool. Could be viable in ZVZ. Could be good for bows, but doesn't have armor pierce, which we do like on the normal bow. It's a little bit slower and it's got quite a long cooldown, but definitely see some potential with this item. Talking of new mechanics, we've got the energy shaper. Now this is the one everybody was absolutely loving in the trailer. They saw the trailer and they were like, what is this? Divine Engine channels a beam which follows the cursor position for 4 seconds. Every 0.3 seconds, it does damage. So once you do it, you aim it just by moving the cursor here, and you've got this kind of minigun laser effect, and that it is cool. Like, again, this could be wrecking face in ZVZ. This could be choke point control in GVG. It could be a great PvE clearer. I don't know, but it just is impressive to use. And again, much like the arrows from the bow, if your target's on the move, you can trace them. You can trace them with this. It's responsive to the cursor. You don't have to click anything else. Obviously, you're stationary during it. I do kind of wish it lasted a little bit longer. I wouldn't mind like a 5 or 6 seconds, so you feel like you get a bit more out of it. But it's a cool looking ability, and you know, cursor tracking, like once it's fired, this is a new mechanic. So any new mechanics are always welcome, because it just gives us more variety in what goes on. A lot of fun to use, looks great, the ultimate looks great. Can't wait to try this one out on the live server. Definitely can see this one seeing play. Next up then, we've got the shadowcaller, one of the more interesting weapons. This is the curse staff and their ability Inner Shadow. Now this, I don't think this will work in here. I believe it's only to be cast on players, which is kind of weird if you're trying to level it up. We will try it on the mobs. Maybe the mobs have an armor class and we can try it. So as you can see, it can only be crafted on players, but you can cast it on yourself as well. So we'll have a look at the abilities. Let me just dispatch this mob real quick so we can have a look. Hopefully we'll get some players to test it out on for a future video. But basically the armor class of your opponent dictates what it does. So if you cast it on yourself, it has a different effect. So if you've got leather armor, cloth armor, or plate armor, the ability will do something different. So if you're in plate, it will slow enemies by 40%, and after 1.5 seconds, a shadow lands a huge blow, which deals 482 physical damage and reduces resistances. So this is an armor pierce. So let me just put on plate and cast it on myself so we can see. And then we'll put on the leather. I don't have cloth on me, unfortunately, bit of an oversight, but we'll check out that anyway. So if you cast it on yourself, you can see he sort of summons a spirit with a great big hammer that then claps you. Pretty cool animation, pretty quick animation actually, and a very large AoE, so potentially good. The only issue I've got in a sort of a ZVZ situation where these AoEs can be good is that it can be quite hard to pick out an exact target to cast it on unless you have one pre-selected ready to go. On a leather user then, it will deal 80 magic damage up to 5 times and then heals you for the inflicted damage. So this is like a dot slash self-heal, like vampiric strike kind of thing. It should be a lifesteal mechanic, so it shouldn't give you anything else. If you cast it on yourself, it creates this kind of fatal blade effect that we've seen before. So I'm assuming that's like an AoE effect that either goes on you or the enemy. So if it's on the enemy, they'll hit all their friends around them. and if it's on yourself, it creates this kind of aura. And then cloth armor, it does a magic damage attack that hits up to 9 times. We don't have cloth on us, so we can't see the exact effect, but it's kind of cool that you actually have the option to cast it on yourself as well as the enemies. So you've got potential to create the build around yourself as opposed to relying on the enemy being a specific class. Definitely see ZVZ applications in this along with the damnation, but GVGs, it might be a little bit clunky to use, but you never know. Obviously, people come up with new stuff all the time, and I look forward to seeing what's going to be happening. Next up then, the Grail Seeker. This is the quarterstaff, and the ability Soul Shaker slams the staff on the ground and hits enemies in a line in front of you. Sounds a bit like the polehammer. Enemies hit receive physical damage. It leaves an area on the ground which lasts for 4 seconds. Anyone who touches it stays rooted for 4 seconds until the area vanishes. So in that 4 seconds, if you touch it, you're stuck in it till it ends. For the next 3 seconds, you can use the ability 1 more time. However, if you use it twice in a row, the cooldown will be longer. So this is a cool new mechanic. You have the option to double cast it. So you can see here, we can slam them and they're rooted, and we get to double cast it if we want, but it has a much longer cooldown. So that's kind of nice. If you whiff it, you have a shorter cooldown. If you hit the god one, if you hit a huge clump and you're mega happy, you can go again. I really like that. Again, that's kind of a new thing that we haven't seen before. There's a lot of new mechanics that we're seeing, which is always nice, but I like it. Hit once, hit twice, and you can actually put 2 of these areas down. So that'll give really good choke point control. You can see it's around the size of a bedrock mace, rooting your enemies. Good for ZVZ, potentially good as a GVG weapon because it does reasonable damage actually on the hit. And again, being able to hit them twice for 485 and root them for like 7 seconds, if you count the first one and the second one overlapping at max usage. I really like it. I think this is a really powerful weapon and is definitely going to see a fair bit of play. Right, next up then, the Dawn Song, the Fire Staff, which does look a bit like the Arcane as well, but it's got the ability Flaming Phoenix. Summons a flaming phoenix that burns the ground with its fiery breath. Enemies hit by the fire breath take magic damage. The ground keeps burning for 6 seconds afterwards. Any enemies in there receive burning magic damage for every 0.5 seconds and have a 40% healing reduction. So this is an item with healing reduction built in. It's got quite a decent range. It's got a target, then a vector target though for the item. And look at that. It's like a phoenix kind of carpet bomb effect. Really, really cool looking, really impressive. And anything with healing reduction is going to be played. Now, the Brimstone, as we know, is a top tier ZVZ weapon. So if these would replace the Brimstone, who knows? But 40% healing reduction, I mean, look, if you check the range, it's got a decent base range and you can fire beyond. So you can send it almost off screen, which is super important for a ZVZ weapon to have that sort of range. It's got a big wide area. It burns over time. Obviously, it can be amped up by beams. It looks cool and reduces healing. This is definitely going to be played in ZVZ. 100% this has use. Might even have use in GVG. Could see the return of fire to the top tier. But I'm a big fan of this one. This is one of my favorites simply because of how cool the animation is as well. And look how big that is. Look how big that area is. Think of choke points. Think of castles. Think of towers. Think of like GVG choke points. That is definitely going to be a top tier weapon in the Rise of Avalon. So next up then is the new arcane called the Elder's Evensong. This is it looks a bit like the fire weapon, and it's got an ability called the Dark Sphere. Summons a Dark Sphere that hits 0.6 seconds after the cast ends. deals magic damage and applies a dark aura to 5 enemies in a 5-meter impact radius. The aura lasts for 7 seconds. Any enemy is slowed by 20%, they lose 15% healing, their damage is reduced by 15% for players, 8% for mobs. If multiple auras overlap, it stacks 5 times. So I'm not quite sure if that counts as like each. Okay, so they each get a dark aura, and if they overlap, the ability stacks. So this is potentially a very good GVG weapon, right? Because arcane can already do decent damage with frazzle and energy bolt. We know this from the old arcane meta. The fact that it hits 5 people, exactly 5, makes me think GVGs and Hellgates. Slowed for 20%, healing reduced and damage output reduced. You know, there's a lot of different ability effects in there. It's quite quick. You know, hitting most of an enemy team would be insane. It does reasonable damage. Like, there's definitely a lot of potential with this ability. Very, very cool looking effect as well. I mean, it could be used in ZVZs, but only hitting 5 people is a bit of a deal breaker for a ZVZ item. So I can definitely see this being played in 5s. Either the tank arcane with Mimic. So the new Mimic ability, you could, in theory, grab Snare Charge off a Mace player. So you could have Snare Charge with Energy, Arcane Protection or Magic Shock, and this Dark Sphere, and you can have a really cool control-y tank build. It's very quick, it's got a long range. The cast time does give the enemy a bit of a reaction window, but the cooldown is pretty quick. The base cooldown, when I don't have any refreshes up, is 22 seconds, with some cooldown reduction from leather, but you've got the cast time and then a delay before it hits though, so it does give the enemies opportunity to get out of it. But what a fantastic looking effect as well. Definitely see this one having some uses, probably in 5v5s. Next up, another super interesting weapon then, the Elder's Chill Howl, the Frost Staff. Now this is a cool mechanic for Frozen Crystal. You can cast on an enemy or any ally, including yourself. This will create a radius of 6 meters around the target, which slows people by 20% for 3 seconds. Whoever you cast it on gets frozen inside a crystal, right? The conditions though are different. If it's an ally or yourself, you get instantly frozen inside the crystal. While inside the crystal, you're invincible, you cannot be healed, and you can't do anything. And when it bursts, it does damage. If you cast it on an enemy, they will also be frozen in a crystal, but only if they are still inside at the end. And then when it bursts, you can see it does damage in a root. So it's got that kind of permafrosty vibe to it, in that you've got that AoE explosion. I don't know how I feel about like freezing an enemy so they take no damage, but they all take damage when the crystal goes off, even the guy who's frozen. I also don't know how I feel about, for example, your teammate not doing anything for 2 seconds in order to become a living bomb, but it could be a really good like save as well. So for example, you're playing backline DPS. Your frontliner goes in and he eats the bomb combo from a one-hand crossbow. You can block the damage from the bomb and turn it into like a turnaround. So he gets bombed, you freeze him, the bomb does no damage, then he blows up, the enemies around him are slowed, and suddenly your bruiser out the front has got slowed enemies, a chunk of burst damage, and the momentum could swing. It's really cool. I kind of liken it to Fiend Sandals. You know, it's a high skill ceiling ability that with clutch play could have a huge impact in 5v5s. It could, in theory, be used in ZVZ as well, because there's no limit to who it hits. It's got a slow, but permafrost is probably better, let's be honest. I do like it though. I think it's got a lot of potential. It seems to do a fair bit of damage as well, which is always nice. And another interesting mechanic. One thing I've noticed is all of the mechanics for these are very, very interesting. There's no boring weapons so far. Everything seems pretty cool. Next up is the mace then. And this is another super interesting one. One that we possibly can't see in too much detail here, because you'll see why. But the Oath Keepers, you'll recognize them from the Avalonian mobs. They have an ability called Blessed Aura. So this creates a Blessed Aura in front of you for 3 seconds. Any ally who goes through gets a shield that absorbs 2,569 damage. And their move speed is increased for 50%. Any ally, there's no limit on the number of allies that go through this, I believe, right? In a ZVZ, you set this up as you go in, and everybody gets this enormous shield. You're kiting back. You could shield up all your allies. It's outrageous. And then on top of this, you actually buff your maces when you go through, and your maces will start to do healing. So if I put this down here, you'll see I've got a 2,000 shield for 5 seconds. I'm taking no damage. On top of that, my maces will start doing an AoE heal. Seems like it could definitely be a good PvE weapon as well. Like having that shield in PvE is nice. Having a self-heal, although it could potentially give you healing sickness, which is never the best thing. But it's really cool to see this get like a full defensive ability. It looks amazing too. It reminds me of Darkseer a little bit from Dota. But yeah, again, this is definitely something that I would expect to see in ZVZ. As you know, as you charge in for the engage, big damage shields go out. Only lasts 5 seconds, but the 50% move speed as well. So you've almost got an occult staff paired with a enigmatic staff on a mace. You get the speed boost from occult. You get the shield from enigmatic, and it's on a mace, so you've still got snare charge. Super cool. I can't wait to see players find uses for this because I really love it. Next up then is the Hallowfall, and this is the Holy Staff. Now I call this the Holy Trinity Staff because it behaves a bit like a Trinity Spear. Divine Intervention. You jump towards a ground target location. In a 5-meter impact, you heal up to 10 allies. You knock enemies in the air, knocking enemies in the air as we expect. And each ally healed gives you a resistance buff for 7 seconds, up to 3 allies. So this is is this like offensive healer? So all my friends are going low. You come in. It's like you dive in, heal them, knock all the enemies up, and give yourself resistances. Like, pretty cool. The output remains to be seen. The range is decent though. I mean, it's a Holy Staff with a mobility as well. A mobility E on a Holy Staff is something we've never seen before. I think it's fantastic. I'm a big fan of this because it's so different to all of the other holies. Seems like it could have function in Hellgates, and I mean you gotta be careful. Healers diving in have always got to be careful, but I think it will be used. I can see it being used in ZVZ. I mean, it only heals up to 10 allies, but then so does Fallen, so does anything else. Like, there's always an upper limit for a lot of things. It's a knock-up, which generally doesn't suffer from diminishing returns or CC resistance. But I just think the output's not huge, but you're probably going to get like things that buff your healing. It's a two-hander, so you can't use the healing. Oh no, it's a one-hander in fact. So you could pair it with the healing buff offhand for super big heals when you dive in. Didn't realize it was a one-hander, so that's really cool to see. And yeah, I think this is a super nice weapon. And I look forward to leaping in and saving my buddies like some sort of deranged paladin. Next up then is possibly one of the most interesting weapons here, the Nature Staff, which is known as the Iron Root Staff. has a crazy interesting E called Soul Link. Now this is an ability which links 2 players together. So what you do is you cast it once, you then have a window to cast it again, and then the 2 targets become linked together. And the effect this ability has depends on who's linked. So it's definitely immediately your mind goes to 2v2 Hellgates. Not that that's exactly what's going to happen, but that's something you would look at. So the abilities are as follow. If 2 allies are linked together, the damage taken is split between the 2. So it allows you to tank for a friend half of his damage. And if the target is healed, the other target gets healed by the same amount. So let's think about that again. 2 allies linked together. If you graveguard one of them, the graveguard hits both of them. If you rejuvenate one of them, it heals both of them. That is incredible in clutch situations. You can effectively double the value of single target healing, which is insane. Now this doesn't actually do any damage or healing itself, but this ability amplifies so many combos in there. And that's just the ally combination. If an ally is linked to an enemy, or you are linked to an enemy, 30% of the enemy healing received, you get. And 30% of the ally's damage that's received goes to the enemy. So effectively, if the enemy gets healed, it heals the friendly player a bit that's linked. And if the friendly player gets damaged, the enemy takes some of that damage. So it's just a value ability that steals some of their healing input and transfers some of the damage output. And then the ultimate wombo is double enemy. If you link 2 enemies together, the enemy that takes damage, the second enemy takes 50% of that damage. So if I put the thorns on here, you can see they're both taking crazy damage from the thorns because they're linked together. You can see what it does normally, but they were both doing thorns procs to each other. So it's basically a 50% amp from each of them onto the other. And pair this with like wombo combos, like snipe crossbows, you know, explosive stuff like dual daggers, death givers, linked enemy. This is just insane. This could be the most broken weapon of the bunch. I mean, I don't know if there's a range on the Soul Link. Okay, there's a max range, but it's fairly decent. So you'd have to use a lot of mobility to escape it. And the cooldown is pretty quick. Like, link the 2 together, the cooldown is 18 seconds, but the duration is quite long anyway. So you're going to be using this quite a lot, and this ability could change the way we play the game. Honestly, it's that crazy. Anything 2v2s, 5v5s, anything like that, this is going to be a big factor. This could become the meta healing weapon. The only downside is the E doesn't actually do any healing. So you're going to need, you're going to need that Graveguard. You're going to need like the big heals on your other abilities. What's super cool though is that you can link yourself to an enemy that's being focused, or link an ally to an enemy that's being focused, and then all of the saves that are used on that guy will then heal the ally as well. So if the enemy graveguards their ally, you'll get a chunk of it. If they spam heals on that ally, you get a chunk of it. So there is technically healing from the E. It's also a one-hander, so you do have offhand potential to amp your healing and to give you the playstyle that you want. But this could be one of the most impressive weapons. And again, I can't wait to see this in the hands of super skilled players. The final weapon then in this very, very long video, thank you for sticking with me if you got this far, is the Daybreaker, the Spear. About time Spears got some love. They are going to get a new weapon. And this one has Breakthrough, an uninterruptible cast, which is one of the first uninterruptible casts we've seen of the new weapon set. It's a short-ish cooldown at 22 seconds with a bit of CDR on the leather gear. And it's a pretty nice ability. It's a one-hand spear as well, so you do get an offhand. You charge towards the ground position. Enemies hit on the way will be purged and receive damage. While charging, you cannot be CC'd. So you can't be stunned. You can't, you can't be rooted. That's really nice, and it's not stack dependent. So you're able to lunge as normal with your lunging stabs, and you're not worried about the stacks. It's a fair amount of damage, and as you can see there, just wailing on through them feels good. This could become a ZVZ spear for sure. There's no limit on how many you can hit in a clump. It purges them of all their buffs, which is always good. They lose their night helms, they lose their hots. It does, in theory, it does remove hots because it's a full purge. It could even see GVG play, 5v5 play, who knows? But I love the fact that you're not reliant on spear stacks. So you could just play your spear independently and use the ult anytime you fancy. It's very responsive. You can't have it cancelled. You're unCCable, so it can be used as an escape. This could bring spears back into the meta in a good way. And I just love it. I love the feel of it. I think it feels nice to use. I've always liked spears, and I kind of feel bad that they dropped out of meta for quite a while since the Grudge. We've seen some people mess around with Trinity. We've seen some people have some ideas around spears, but it's never really seen proper play. And this, this has got a lot of potential. You could be beamed before you go in to do a really big hit. You can use inner focus to hit harder in ZVZ. I think this is a weapon that's got a lot of potential, and the fact that it's an uninterruptible cast, it's a purge, and you can't be CC'd. That's a lot packed into one E on a 25-second base cooldown, I think it is, or a 30-second base cooldown. But brilliant ability, looks cool, fun to play, responsive, and yeah, a fantastic spear. Probably the best spear we've got, in honesty. So I expect to see this one played a lot. So there you go, guys. That is a first look at all of the different weapons that are hitting Albion Online in the Rise of Avalon expansion, August the 12th. We're going to be having a ton more videos. We're going to look at corrupted dungeons. We're going to look at the mists. We've got so much to look at still in Albion Online, but that is it for this video. Let me know what you think about these weapons. What if there's any interactions, any uses that you think I've missed? What do you think is going to be the best weapon from the expansion? What do you think is a bit underwhelming? And, just your general thoughts on the whole thing. Anyway, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. I hope you did enjoy this video. I'll see you next time for another one. Have a great day.